Greetings, this is Ty Brown here with AthleticDirectorU. I am on campus at University of Illinois and I'm joined by Josh Whitman. Josh is the Director of Athletics here at Illinois. Greetings, Josh. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, great to see you, Ty. Thanks for having me.
Now, Josh, I'm happy to be here. There is a lot going on campus in terms of facilities, and we'll dive into that shortly. I want to talk a little bit about your background. You're sixth year here at Illinois, lawyer background, worked actually in law prior to, or actually in between time when you were working in college athletics.
That's right. I worked here in athletics as I was getting my law degree. Then I practiced law for a few years and then got back into college sports and haven't left since.
Yes, sir. You played football here. You spent 4 years in the NFL, and you had AD stops at University of Wisconsin lacrosse and Washington University at St. Louis. So roughly 17 years in the industry, a lot of experience in terms of leadership, in terms of culture, in terms of understanding what it takes to be successful in athletics. And kind of what you're doing here is building things. One question right off the bat, the Big Ten, a lot of sports, there's a lot of changes in college athletics. Do you guys, are there ever, I know there's discussions about innovative sports, or is everything traditional? You think about like hockey or something like that. Do you guys have those kind of discussions on a grander scale as opposed to just a local scale when you talk about conference wide?
Absolutely. I think everything right now is on the table with regard to the future of college athletics. And I think maintaining the viability and the vibrant future of college sports is incumbent on us as athletic directors in a conference like the Big Ten. And so we do have those conversations. I would say that more of them do happen on the campus level than at the conference level. I think we're all looking to position ourselves on the right edge of the future as we work through some of these changes in college sports, and we want to look to be innovative and create new opportunities for student athletes as the landscape is changing under our feet.
Which is important. But I think about your background. You grew up in, I believe, West Lafayette, Indiana.
That's true.
Right? You look up to, I guess, Purdue, maybe. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I was always a Michigan State fan. But of course, there was USC or UCLA, all these schools that you grow up looking up to, and then you end up where you end up. So I wonder about that. As a childhood, you like a school, but then when you're a leader of an institution, you want to beat them up as much as you can when you face them. Talk about that aspect of it, of being from an actual, I don't know if it's a college town, but the school is there.
No, West Lafayette's absolutely a college town, very similar in a lot of ways to Champaign-Urbana. Lafayette, West Lafayette was my home. It's where my parents still live. I grew up in the backyard of Purdue University, and so certainly was very aware of what the Boilermakers were doing. And I don't know if I ever would have described myself as a bona fide Purdue fan, but right. It's hard to grow up in that environment and not have an understanding and appreciation for what's going on in that department. Certainly some of those Purdue basketball players, football players were people that I did look up to, and that my first exposure to major college athletics was going to events at Mackey Arena and Ross-Ade Stadium, and that certainly had a lot to do with shaping who I am today and certainly putting me on the path to be in the position I'm in now. And do I enjoy beating the Boilermakers? I do. Yeah, absolutely. That's
yes, sir.
Any of our coaches will tell you that I like to circle those games on the calendar, and any chance we get to go up against Purdue Pete and come out with a victory, that's always a good day for me.
Excellent. I think thinking about college athletics, this is the reason I'm here. I want to kind of dig into your thoughts on some of these questions I have here. You look at the industry, you look at conferences, and you look locally. Like, who is the customer for an athletics director, or even for the department on a campus, right? I mean, industry-wide, you think the fans, because they're going to watch and those types of things. But for you as an athletics director, so many people who need to buy in, whether it be recruits, whether it be potential hires, whether it be the students who are here, alumni, everything. So who would you consider your customer?
Yeah, I think for me, I would probably rephrase it and talk about stakeholders or constituencies. I think that one of the inherent challenges in sitting in these particular chairs is the really broad, diverse set of stakeholders we have in college athletics. And I generally think about it in terms of kind of concentric circles, starting at the very core, which is, of course, our student athletes, And then moving out beyond that, you've got our student athletes' families, you've got prospective student athletes, our staff, our coaches, and then you expand out to the campus, the university at large, and our community, certainly our alumni, our donors, our corporate partners. So many different people are involved and invested in college athletics at this level, and University of Illinois is no exception. And so most of the time, I think that our decisions are aligned, meaning that I think that most of the decisions we make are for the betterment of all of those different stakeholders. Where it really gets challenging are those moments where sometimes our decisions place some tension between one particular group of stakeholders and another. And I think that's where organizations generally have to do a really good job of defining their values so that when they face those difficult moments, they go back to their values, and that helps to inform those decisions and helps you prioritize where different stakeholders have to be addressed in that decision making process.
Right. I've talked to a lot of athletic directors and people who work in college athletics and student athlete experience. Right. One of the you said concentric circles. One of the things that I'm probably right at the core, and I guess you try to build or create and maintain an environment where if the student athletes are having a great experience, then as you go out in those concentric circles, whether it be alumni or all the way to media, everyone probably will be, for lack of a better word, satisfied. You hope that a great student athlete experience involves, obviously, academics, um, mental health, and there's an aspect of winning, right? Some type of success on and off the field, court, wherever. And so I like your thought there. But I guess the core to that is making sure that the student have a great experience, and that we tie everybody in from there.
There's no question that is absolutely the center of those circles that I talked about. And when we bring our student athletes onto campus, we talk about two primary goals. One is we want to prepare them for whatever comes next. We want to arm them with a world-class education. We want to give them incredible life experiences. We want to develop for them a network and a set of skills, self-confidence that they can use in wherever their path takes them after their time here on our campus. And at the same time, we want to give them an opportunity to compete at the absolute highest level for conference and national championships. And we feel like if we're able to accomplish those two goals, then that student athlete experience will be incredibly positive and will yield great competitive success. And as we have positive student athlete experience and as we have competitive success, then a lot of those other circles that sort of move out from center are going to be satisfied and excited, energized around the athletic program as well.
And want to contribute, right, to that core.
That's always a nice byproduct of success. There's no question.
Right. So since you've been here, there have been, you talk about facilities, right? And you talk about the industry, and facilities are something that are important. Football, basketball, soccer, track and field, currently working on baseball, softball. Well, I guess basketball is in the works. I mean, there's a number of things that are done or being done here, and I wonder, and I imagine those were all a part of your initial strategic plan, right? 6 years ago, however long ago you came up with it, and I wonder, you got to go back to the drawing board in terms of strategy at some point, because we are accomplishing those things on that level in terms of facilities and bringing in money to be able to build those facilities. But where do you go from here in terms of redrawing and remaking strategy? Do you think further out? Do you always think short term? Tell me about your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think that in these roles, you have to do both. You have to look, obviously, at the ground you're treading now, but you also have to realize that if you've done your job well, the ground you're covering now is ground that you thought about 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so we've been fortunate here. We put a plan in place 5-ish years ago. We talked about 6 significant projects in 5 years, and you hit on what some of those projects are. Most of them are either completed or now under construction. Proud of that. We're excited about those new buildings coming online for the betterment of our student athletes. just this summer, we've started to sit down and talk about, to your question, what's next. And I think that, for us, what's complicated that are a number of these external factors that we all realize are coming to bear at this really critical moment in the history of college athletics. And whether it's the outcome of the Alston decision, whether it's the implications of name, image, likeness, whether it's the open transfer market, potential expansion of the college football playoff, conference realignment, and then the lingering effects of COVID-19 and some of the financial fallout that has for most of our programs across the country.
Right.
You throw all that in the mix, and I think what we know more than ever before is that our revenue model is as unsettled now as it has been in some time. And so from our perspective, we're going to take a bit of a pause here and let some of these pieces clarify themselves. What does our revenue model look like going forward? How do some of those different variables that have been thrown into the pot start to resolve themselves in the next year, 18 months, 2 years? And that will certainly help guide our decisions about what the next phase of our overarching facilities plan will look like, because we want to make sure that we're being thoughtful, proactive, but we also need to be responsible stewards of the university's resources, and we need to be thoughtful about how we identify those resources to bring those projects up out of the ground going forward.
Which is very important. I imagine you never think, okay, we've built things and things are new enough, so let's just
You don't.
operate
No,
like
you
that,
don't.
right?
You've always. It's one of the things I love about this role is, in many ways, it's evergreen. There's always new challenges. There's always new opportunities, and you've got a new group of freshman student athletes walking onto campus every fall. You've always got staff turnover, and you've always got things to do on the facility side, dollars to raise, and so it keeps it fresh for me and for our staff, and allows us to continually challenge ourselves and look to innovate and create in places where we haven't previously.
Yeah. What's interesting about facilities and college athletics is you think about competitive advantage, right? You think about the Big Ten, right? 14 schools. Um, let's just say there's a 10-year period where everybody has new facilities in basketball or something along those lines. This is hypothetical. At what point does the competitive advantage show through? I mean, I guess what you mentioned before, the student athlete experience is a part of it. But I mean, we all have great facilities, right? We think we have what we consider the best coach, right? We believe we are giving a great experience to our student athletes. And then, as an athletic director, as a leader, you and your staff, and even the coaches have to decide, okay, what are we doing that makes it, what is our unique value proposition, to use NBA parlance, right? What are we doing that makes us better than the next person? So, I mean, how do you address that when you're, just planning things for the future?
I think that's right. I think we're getting to a point where facilities are almost table stakes in this game that we're involved in. I don't think that student athletes go room by room and do a pros and cons list of you versus other schools. They're not going to say, well, Illinois' locker room was really better than this other school's, but that other school had a better weight room than Illinois did. I don't think they're going to that level of granular detail. I think it's, do they have a facility or do they not? Have they demonstrated an institutional commitment to success in my sport, or have they not? And assuming that the answer to that is yes, then I think they proceed to other parts of their analysis. And from our perspective, the facilities are exactly that. They're a symbol. They're us reaching a hand out and saying to our student athletes, hey, you matter, your experience matters, your development matters here. And we're going to demonstrate that through making sure that you have facilities that allow you to squeeze every ounce of potential from your body, from your mind, as a student and an athlete here at the University of Illinois. But beyond that, it's important to me, and certainly we message this to our staff, and understanding that facilities are only as good as the people who live and work inside of them. And I think that our calling card is, and hopefully always will be, the connections that we're able to make between people involved in our program. I think our people here at the University of Illinois are uncommonly close, and that's something that we pride ourselves on. Our program's a little smaller by high major standards. We don't have as many sports. We don't have as many student athletes, and that allows us to have a level of intimacy to our relationships that I think isn't necessarily possible in a bigger environment. And so we really work to create a high degree of trust between our coaches, our student athletes, between our student athletes and their colleagues, and across our entire program. And we feel like if we're able to do that, then that great student athlete experience and team success will follow.
Right. You think about recruiting, think about University of Illinois when you were coming out of high school, right? What made it the place for you? I imagine it has a lot to do with the people, right? Who knows what facilities look like back in the 90s, right? For me, my process was a little different, right? I was brainwashed to go to Michigan State because parents from Michigan, and father went to Michigan State for a year or two. Uncle was a graduate, and they said that's where you're going to go. So I went and I walked on, right? I chose football. I mean, they had to choose me too, but I chose football. But I wonder about you being, somebody who played and went off a few years in the NFL, and now you come back and you're leading this thing here, new coach here, and like, what was it for you? And are we now operating in an evolution of that process, or are things completely different from how they were back when we were coming to play football?
I don't think they are different. I think that the core value system of the University of Illinois has been very stable for a very long time. And I think this is a place that strives to do things the right way, that works aggressively to compete at the highest level, that values excellence in everything we do all across campus, on the academic side of the house as well as here in the athletic program. And I think that those characteristics have defined us for a very long time. I think that we continue to find ways to innovate, to push the envelope forward, to look to change the game in some senses. But I think that the core tenets of the University of Illinois has always been the people, the relationships, the care and concern that we have for each other as colleagues, as mentors, as teachers and educators for our students. And so I think in a lot of ways, maybe some of the physical manifestations of the campus have changed over the last 25 years, but I think the core values have remained fairly steady. And I think that's incumbent on us as campus leaders to understand our role as relatively short-term caretakers of that tradition, and to make sure that that tradition is moved forward. And if we're fortunate enough to be here for 15, 20, 25 years, then our stamp on the place might be a little bigger than others who are here for a shorter time. But all of us have that responsibility, whether we're here for a year or for 40 years, to make sure that we respect and honor the great tradition that we have here at the University of Illinois and what it means to be a member of the Fighting Illini family.
Right, and that's a constantly trying to be better tomorrow than we are today, which is one of the reasons I like working near sports and college athletics. Right, a long time I worked at the Football Coaches Association, and one of the things I really valued about coaches is that they were always trying to. 98% of them were always trying to get better, right? Always trying to improve so they can beat the person across the field from them, but also so that the people that they were coaching could go off to become great people in society. I read somewhere about something called exhaustive mediocrity. And what that is, everybody in your organization is trying to do the best they can and working as hard as they can. And the outcomes aren't that great. Well, if you know that you've brought everybody in and everybody is great, they're actually excellent in terms of productivity, but everybody's working as hard as they can and the outcome isn't that great, what's the problem? This thing said the problem is when we try to push as much as we can in terms of strategy and planning and executing, we don't tend to consider the trade-offs. What are we willing to invest less in? What are we willing to invest less in so that we can be great in another thing, right? You think about NIL and all these things that are on our plate now. Are there things that we are allowing people to do less so that we can be great in the new area. So I wonder about your thoughts on that, because I know in athletics we operate at 110% and expect the most out of everybody at all times. So talk to me about this. What do you think about that, I guess?
I, I think that's a very astute observation. I think that we as leaders in college athletics have to be very thoughtful about how we handle the load on our staff. I think that, I think about using your comments, I think about my closet at home, right? And by virtue of working in these positions, you get a lot of gear,
Yeah.
right? You get a lot of polo shirts, you get a lot of t-shirts, you get a lot of shoes. And when I first got here, every time I put some more gear in my closet, I needed it. There was a lot of room. Now that I've been here a little bit longer, I'm running out of room. And so I found out that as I get new things, I need to take things out. And I think that too often in college athletics, we haven't been very proactive in taking things out. We just layer on top of what has been previously. And so I especially in this environment, as things are evolving at an incredibly rapid pace, I think those programs that are able to identify where the puck is going, as they say in hockey, and are willing to sort of shed some what are increasingly outdated ideas, protocols, practices, they're going to free time up for their people to be creative, to be innovative, to be on the cutting edge of where we're going, because they've been freed from trying to grasp where we've been. And so I think that is I think it's a really thoughtful comment, and I think that there's a lot of value in that as we in leadership positions look to put our programs in a competitively advantaged spot going forward. Trying to find the right amount of human capital time is always a challenge, and in a lot of cases, sometimes the solution has been to go out and grow headcount, add more people. I think sometimes we'd be better served by trying to find ways to use the people we have more efficiently, and that I think will be ever more important going forward.
Yeah, I think the term in what I read was strategic trade-offs, right? What in terms of the people we have, what are the strategic trade-offs we are willing to give up to invest more into our future? It goes beyond staff. It's also athletic directors, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep deprivation, who
That's
knows what
right.
it is, right? How can I get more sleep? What am I willing to give up to
Mm-hmm.
get more? Even thinking just on a personal level, right? So those things are important. Thinking about how you plan for the future, which is something that is always probably taking up bullet points in your brain. But you do have to be in the present. You do have to be thinking about Wash U at St. Louis. I interviewed the athletic director now, Anthony Asma.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned to me that as he's walking through campus, he has to be present, not thinking about the meeting he's about to go to, because there are people that will walk up to him as he's going that know who he is. He may or may not know them, but at that point, they're probably the most important person in the
Mm-hmm.
world, and you got to be there, especially if it's a student athlete. So I wonder how you do that as a leader. How do you, try not to be so focused on tomorrow that you don't execute at 100% today, or don't realize to be present today?
Yeah, I talk to our student athletes often about what I consider to be the secrets to success as a student athlete at a place like the University of Illinois. And one of those secrets, I think, is also applicable to staff members, administrators, and that's your ability to focus. And I really believe, especially in today's day and age where multitasking has become such an accepted practice, that a person's ability to truly focus on a given task, do it as well as they can possibly do it, and then move on to the next thing can be a separator going forward, really a competitive advantage. And so I challenge our student athletes when I say, when you're at practice, your challenge is when you walk between the lines, you don't need to worry about the argument you're having with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. You don't need to think about the test that you've got to study for later that evening. You don't need to think about the term paper that you have due. You need to think about practice and that rep and that play and then when you leave practice and it's time for you to study for that exam, you don't need to be thinking about the ball that you dropped at practice or the block that you missed. You need to be thinking about that exam. And I think the same is true when you're in a leadership role or an administrative role in college sports. Right now, the most important thing to me is this conversation that you and I are having. And it doesn't make any sense for me. It's not fair to you or to me for me to be sitting here dreaming about what I'm going to do when I go home tonight, or how excited I am to see my son and daughter. I need to be thinking about this conversation. When we're done, I'll tackle whatever that next thing is, and I'll give that my entire attention. And I think that's how I approach this work, because I think that the days can be varied. I'll move from one meeting to a next that has entirely different focuses, and your ability to do that, I think, is really critical to your success. And sometimes, I think a lot of times people talk about work-life balance. To me, it's about almost hour by hour prioritization. Okay, what's the highest and best use of my time for the next 60 minutes? And I'm going to give that thing my entire attention. I'm going to move on to the next thing. And those hours can change. One could be a meeting about fundraising. One could be a conversation about a student athlete issue. Another could be a personnel situation. Then maybe I run to my daughter's dance recital. Then maybe I have lunch with my wife, and then I'm back doing, and so I think in that way you're able to kind of build your time and maintain your focus on each challenge, each issue in front of you, and try not to let your attention get clouded by the other things that are waiting for you on the horizon.
Is there a process at the beginning of the day, because you may have those back-to-back meetings that may be about things that are completely different, of preparation, right? Or, I mean, I imagine 6 years in, you probably have assistants with the CE at the end that, right, to help, I guess, prepare whatever you need for meetings that are going to come later in the day. So you go over it, debrief, and then when you have to switch from this meeting to the next one, you sit down, and these points are probably refreshers on what we're talking about here. What is your process for that, I guess?
A lot of it depends on the nature of the conversations. At this point in my tenure, I know enough about several subjects where maybe I don't need to do a lot of advanced work, whereas if I were in year one or year two, there probably would have been a lot more prep work required. Now, other meetings that maybe carry a little more significance, or depending on who the other attendees are, the issues that are being discussed, we may have 3 or 4 meetings to prepare for that one meeting. And so and I think you have to plan accordingly. You have to look out long enough on your calendar to know what's coming, and what kind of preparation is going to be required to put yourself and your group in the best position possible when that meeting occurs. And it just varies depending on the nature of the conversations and the meetings, and you just got to use your own judgment and make sure that you're planning ahead, so that when those big meetings happen, you feel like you're ready to go and fully fluent in whatever the issues are that are going to be discussed.
I'll ask you a couple questions here, then we'll wrap. One about culture, and one about leaders helping other leaders. The one about culture, the culture here at University of Illinois that you have, I guess, evolved, because you said it's similar to what it was when you played here, and you have evolved and strengthened since you've been here. I wonder, would your student athletes be able to describe the culture the way you or the people that you work with describe the culture here at Illinois?
I hope so. I hope so. We certainly have worked hard to create a high level of trust between our staff and our student athletes. We've worked hard to be transparent with our student athletes. We've worked hard to be vulnerable with them, and to address hard issues head on. And that doesn't mean that we've connected with each one of the 500 student athletes we have in our program on that very personal level, but we've certainly tried, and I hope that the vast majority of them have felt that. We talk often. If you were to walk upstairs and talk to our staff, and you said, what's one of the things that Josh always says? I always talk about, we're very fortunate that we do work that matters with people we care about. And our staff has heard me say that. Our student athletes have heard me say that. Work that matters with people you care about. We all should be fortunate enough in our lives to have that opportunity. And that, I think, is really a defining characteristic of what we do here at the University of Illinois. I feel strongly that the work we do here with Illinois athletics matters to an awful lot of people, and it starts with our student athletes. And getting back to the uncommon closeness that we have here as a group of people. You talk about people you care about. You get to know them on a personal level. There's very few things in the world that bring the same closeness as working in college sports. There's an intensity. There's a visibility. Long hours, nights, weekends, pressure, successes, failures, emotional highs, lows. It all pushes people together, and it allows us to develop bonds with our colleagues that really are unmatched in any other field that I've seen, in something that I really love about what we do. And I hope that our student athletes here as Fighting Illini feel that same connection to each other and to us.
Work that matters with people we care about. Yeah, I think that's excellent. Now, this last question here is kind of industry wide in terms of being an athletic director and other leaders of athletic departments around the country, and the support you guys can provide for or do provide for each other. Have you ever, there was a coach at an FCS program. He had a major health issue, 20 years ago. And when he would watch a game after his game, and he would see a coach having a conniption on the sideline or something, he would call that coach later in the week and say, "Hey, man, I mean, we're coaching the game here and it's important, but your health is more important. Like, you got to really reel that stress level in," and those kind of things. I wonder about athletic directors supporting each other, whether it be on issues you're dealing with on campus, whether it be on personal issues, whether it be you see somebody in a press conference and you know that person, like, she is not doing okay right now. And so let me give her a call later on this week or so. I mean, do you guys, tell me about that community you have?
We absolutely do. I think it's a very tight knit community. It's a small community to begin with.
Right.
You think about however you want to define it, whether it's all Division I, 300 some odd schools, if it's the FBS schools, 115 or so,
Right.
whether it's the quote unquote Power 5, 65 schools, or whether it's the Big 10, 14. I think each layer brings with it another level of friendship and opportunity. Certainly the people I'm closest with, especially now having gone through a pandemic with them, are my colleagues across the Big 10. And I feel very fortunate to be a part of this conference and to be able to share a relationship with each one of those 13 colleagues. And I know that I can pick up the phone and call them. And even though we're competitors, when the lights come on Saturday or on any given day with our different sports, there is a true collaborative nature in our league where people are concerned for each other, they're looking out for each other, they want to share best practices and make sure that the Big Ten remains viable and at the forefront of college sports. And so that's been a very meaningful community for me, certainly is our Big Ten athletic director group. I have such respect and appreciation for them. But then it's been a lot of fun, and certainly here over the last 18 months, we haven't been able to get out and travel the way that we customarily would. But I'm looking forward to reconnecting with colleagues from other conferences and other levels. There just isn't a huge population of people who do this work, and so the chance to have some community there and some shared experiences, support means a great deal.
It would be a lot. I mean, would you call Purdue if you felt like?
Oh, absolutely. No, I would. Mike has been a great friend and have tremendous respect for the program they have over there.
Right.
And doesn't mean I don't love the chance to beat them. Just like all, every AD would say this. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
winning games in the Big Ten in any sport is hard, and you celebrate every one of them, and you never want to take success for granted. And whether it's Purdue or Rutgers or Ohio State or whomever, it's anytime you can notch one in the victory column in any sport, it's a big day and one worth celebrating.
you take them all. We just want one more point than the other person
That's
has,
right.
and we will take the victory.
That's right.
Well, Josh, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you hosting me here, University of Illinois. I really appreciate and like what you've done here, and I think the people here appreciate what you bring as the athletics director here.
Thanks, Ty. Appreciate you visiting us, and look forward to staying in contact.
Yes, sir. That was Josh Whitman. He's the director of athletics here at University of Illinois. And of course, I am Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.